There was a good one for, well, Ashley had a good point. It's not time to take profits. Waiting for Bitcoin to go to 500K. I got to tell you, that's a pretty good strategy. Wait for it to go to 500K. It might. I'm not for sure. There was somebody from Road Trip. Here we go. Road Trip says, I don't know, man. My first pre-sale. I'm about to get wrecked. So everybody, if you're in pre-sales, which is the early rounds of tokens, and I don't know, buddies, where you're at. If you're in America and you were able to get into a pre-sale, congratulations. It's not easy to do because Gary is protecting us very hard from profits. But just know that as far as like a pre-sale moving into the listing date, usually the first 24 hours, things go pretty high, parabolic, because of the market makers that are behind the scenes. Then as it starts to taper off, you're going to see a massive dip. Usually that's what happens. So it's up to you. Watch that video that I was just talking about, as a matter of fact, which talks about the half and half method. Please watch that. And it just talks about profit taking and when to do those things and then just to kind of move off. Because over time, if it's a good project, it'll bounce back. But those first 24 to 40 hours can be very brutal, especially for people who just started. That's it. Doug is eating his food and listening. I'm glad I could provide him some entertainment as he's washing down whatever he's doing. Frankie says, when the rate cuts drop, we fly. I have to agree there. The question is the Fed cutting the rates because the data says we're on a soft landing, or are they cutting rates because everything got screwed up? Remember, one of the guys that was in the slideshow, Mr. Peter Zeihan, who, as I remind you, when he was on Joe Rogan, said that Bitcoin would go to zero when it was at around 17,000. Maybe it was 13,000, 14,000, somewhere around there. He's like, it's going to go to zero. It's worthless. It has no intrinsic value. It's very ridiculous. No one wants to buy it. Of course, here we are. Yeah, we don't all get it right? Geopolitics. But the point is he just put out a video where he talks about that rates won't get cut for the next 5 years, potentially 10 years. It was an amazing take. Amazing. You got to watch that video. I just don't see that happening, especially because something's going to break within 5 years. I don't see how they can possibly do that, but I'm not a macroeconomist, so who knows? I'm just a guy in front of a really nice green screen. Hey, Catacombs, how you doing? Panda's here. Jesus. Ashley. I sell when Dan sells. I get it wrong a lot, just so you know. Seth says, I plan to sell 80% like Rob. Works for me too. I'm going to give you an alternative, a devil's advocate. What if I'm wrong? Like I've been wrong about a ton of other things. Let's be honest. Let's just say that it really does happen, right? Not only does El Salvador make it, legal tender and they prop it up, now we get a lot of people who are retirement accounts. A lot more people come in through the ETFs and start to realize what it is. Central banks put it on their balance sheet. It's actually there and transparent. People actually see it. And all of a sudden it snowballs. And before you know it, it's like they say, it's gradually, then suddenly. So the Bitcoin that you have, maybe it's worth, I don't know. Let's just say some ridiculous number. Let's say like John McAfee predicted $1 million. It's worth $1 million because the amount of debt America goes, all the things we always talk about, the amount of debt that America goes into, coupled with the fact that the money printers have to go on to save us. We just can't keep going past 34 trillion, 50 trillion, $60 trillion in debt and not have the money printer go burr. So we have that, you have $1 million. Now one Bitcoin's worth $1 million. Let's just say you've got 0.25. You have $250,000 in Bitcoin. Unfortunately, the median average house cost right here in America is around $419,000, $430,000 or so. You have that Bitcoin, you want to put a nice chunk down because that's how it works, right? 10%, 20%, especially if it's an investment property. What if you're able to then say, look, I'm going to show this, and the banks start to get on board, just like Wells Fargo and JP Morgan did with ETFs, and go, look, this is what I have as far as custody, as far as Bitcoin. I can move a portion of it to prove that I actually have it. I'm not going to give you the keys, but I want you to give me a loan, and that's my collateral, which is Bitcoin. And we can do some kind of smart contract in a layer 2. You can give me the $250,000, Or let's just say they give you half, 125,000, and you're able to put it down. In that situation, I think maybe it would be a foolish thing to actually sell Bitcoin. Let's be honest. Bitcoin is one of the few things that actually do something and actually have a real future. So in that situation, and then of course, as time goes on, that 0.25 Bitcoin that you have is now not worth 250,000. Now it's worth $500,000. Now it's worth a full million because money printers go brr. Maybe World War III doesn't come around. So it's just something to think about. I know it sounds like cut and dry, but I got to give you both sides, because if I don't, then I'm guilty just like everybody else. I guess. Hey, Mad Cow. Yes, Rob is in Texas, not PR. I will be back in Puerto Rico May 31st, as a matter of fact. Can't wait. Zoran says, seriously, in which country would you withdraw cash if I am not a U.S. citizen? Well, not Venezuela, that's for sure. You know that old adage that I always talk about? Nobody ever went broke taking profits. Well, that's not true. If you done that in Venezuela, you essentially just had really nice toilet paper, because that's what the fiat cash was actually for. So it depends on which country you're actually withdrawing. And if that's the euro, are you talking about the lira? Are you talking about yen? Are you talking about rubles? What are we talking about? I like the dollar. In that situation, I could go for that. Steve says 500K in 5 years. Yeah, that's just it. All these price predictions, everybody's got a great price prediction. I'll give you one. It's going to be between $10 and $1 million. That's it. I can't give you, if I give you a time frame, it invalidates everything. It's like Tim Draper, where he starts talking about, okay, Bitcoin's going to be 250,000 by the end of next year. Then next year comes, he's like, okay, maybe next year. Then that year comes, he's like, okay, in 2 years. So it's just, they just keep moving the goalposts. And he's probably going to be right at some point. It's a good question. Brian Gray says, Rob, you're stranded on an island, and you can pick one of the following people. Ben, Jessica, Gary Gensler, who do you pick? I pick nobody. I hate being around people. I'm more of an introvert. Lucho, I took profit. Get out fast. Rob, any advice for people having a hard time buying spot and holding? No. The only thing I can tell you is that the greatest teacher is pain. And I can tell you all my mistakes, and you can try to learn from mistakes that are not your own. But at some point, you're going to have to fall down that rabbit hole. And you're going to have to keep making mistakes, which is buying high and selling not too high. Or, buying in the middle of a time frame and then selling when, maybe it's not ideal, and then you miss out on massive opportunities. So for people who just have a hard time, I'll just remind you that it depends on what you're investing into. And it depends on what your situation actually is. And everybody, I'm going to go through the same spiel. If you're investing something like, let's say $20, $100, and you're looking at it going, and you get a cold sweat, you're like, man, if I lose this, my wife's going to kill me. Or if I lose this, then I can't pay X, Y, Z. You shouldn't be investing. Sorry. And then if you don't have at least a 6-month buffer, one thing I do like about Dave Ramsey is that, he does have some pretty solid advice as far as getting out of debt. And one of those 6 months buffer is a really good one. If you don't have that, and you're kind of just YOLOing into things, I think it's going to be harder. The reason why it's easy for me is, first of all, I don't invest more than I can afford to lose. Second of all, I always use that half and half method, meaning when I invest something in, especially these super crazy meme coins, I'll always take half. As soon as it doubles, I'll take half and let the half ride. And that's where everybody stops. They're like, just take half out and let the other half ride. The next part is this. When it doubles, triples, or quadruples again, you take half of that and you let that ride. Well, now you're in profits, and you let it happen again, 2, 3, 4, 8x, or whatever else it is, whatever you think is going to do, then you take half again. At some point, you just keep taking half, 3, 4, 10x. Sometimes, like in some of these meme coins, I'll be honest with you, I've gone up 10x and I've just missed it because it happened in 24 hours. So I took half. I'm like, I'm cool. And then you just keep doing that until it goes to 0. And that's it. This is the best it is. Not financial advice. Yes. You're welcome. Well, I hope so, because let's be honest, I didn't do a great job last cycle. I talked about Celsius and I talked about Voyager. I hate that fact. Celsius, I had Alex Mashinsky on the show 3 times. And I did think that it was a good platform until it wasn't. It was a good platform until it became a Ponzi scheme. Voyager was a great exchange until it wasn't, until they did this one stupid thing by giving this $630 million, actually it was $960 million loan to 3 Arrows Capital with no collateral. Genius. So on this one, I better help people get out at some point because I did a really bad job last time. I don't care for that Peter guy anymore. He's entertaining. I listen to his stuff. I like him. I just don't like his take on one thing. That's all. Bitcoin is inevitable. Pool looks better. It's okay. Had to get some clarifier in there. Bitcoin standard. Hit the thumbs up. 700 plus in the room. And more. Now we're at 1,754 on my count. When will you go on Joe Rogan? Joe Rogan doesn't want to talk to me. There's much smarter people that he can talk to. Good answer, Rob. Your wife must watch this. I'm telling you. I don't like hanging around a lot of people. Did they ever figure out why Coinbase is down for 4 hours? Nah, we'll never know. They can give us an official answer, but we'll never actually know, and it won't really matter. Missed out last cycle. Don't worry, you're here now. That's what counts. Sell the winner to buy that loser. Exactly. What is it? You pluck the flowers but water the weeds. And you can't do that. You got to let your winners ride, as they say. Always nice to hear tips about Puerto Rico. We were looking at Ryan, gone. I don't know what that means, but I'm telling you, everybody, Puerto Rico is priceless. That price is fantastic. If you go there just for to help with taxes, it's not going to be too fun. But when you get there and you actually explore the island and meet the people and, have good times, it's the greatest place. I love it. Noam says your take on ETH ETF. I don't think it's going to get approved, but there's rumblings that it might actually go through, and looks like BlackRock's in the game. So BlackRock seems to get what it wants. It will be interesting, wouldn't it? That's the question I have for Ben tomorrow. And the question is, let's say the Ethereum ETF doesn't get approved. What happens to Ethereum? How far down do we go? And is that the last ride before we start to go back up? Because I think that would crush Ethereum. And when Ethereum gets crushed, you see a lot of altcoins get crushed. Even the meme coins, which are doing so great. So I wonder if that will be the time to say, okay, well, Ethereum's here. We didn't get that ETF, so now we fall down to sub 2,000 Ethereum, and the pairs or whatever they are, and we're in a very low risk band. Maybe it's time to back up the truck at that point. We'll see. Yes, Mirzan says you have a Bitcoin stack that you'll never sell. I saw. No, even most of my cryptos, I'm not going to sell them all. Because the thing is, and I made this mistake last time, is when I sold everything. I didn't sell everything, but in certain pairs, I sold all these different cryptos. And the reason I had to sell was because I wanted to pay my house off, and I got the house in Puerto Rico. But the problem is that once you sell, there's always this chance of a parabolic run. So if you sell, this is why I always talk about selling 80% of my crypto. If you sell 80%, you got 20% hanging around, it's kind of like your bug out bag. If it goes parabolic, that's great. But then if it starts to really taper off and you're I really need this money, well, you have something to sell if you really want to, or just save it for the next cycle. But 80%, I think, can get a lot of people to where they want to go, I think. Again, everybody's different. But with Bitcoin, let's just say that I sell 80%. I don't even know if I'm going to sell that much. Just depends. But if I keep 20%, You know that globally, I don't even think 1% of people globally own any Bitcoin. It's less than 1%. So in 10, 20, 30 years for my kids and grandkids, if they have a little bit of Bitcoin that I held on to, I don't need them to be Rockefellers. I don't need them to have limitless Bitcoin, which they can do whatever they want to. Because once you give everything to kids, it just screws everything up anyhow. Take a look at all the rich kids that are out there. So for me, I think if I still have 20% hanging on, that's way better than most of the billionaires and millionaires that are out there. I think I'm ahead of the game, but I could be wrong. But that's it. So look, I think that's it for today, about 30 minutes or so. So do me a favor, on your way out, could you guys hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't, if you like what you see. And that's it for today. So thanks so much, everybody. Appreciate you. And I'll see you on the next one. Adios.